I started yesterday by saying that we expect this event to drive the action plan for reimagining India's energy infrastructure over the next decade. Before I start off, let me thank our sponsors. Our gold sponsor is Siemens, and the silver sponsors are Ampersat, Excite, Dassault Systems, Ecool, SNC Electric, and Sun Edison. So without wasting any more time, I'll start off with today's conference. Firstly, for the welcome remarks, I would like to call on dais Mr. Udo Schultzman, who is the Managing Director of Messe Düsseldorf India, the Indian subsidiary of Messe Düsseldorf GmbH. He has brought in his organizational ability as an administrator, has been able to provide structure to the company and streamline the administration as well as operations. Mr. Schultzman is a seasoned trade show expert with over 17 years of valuable and rich experience in organizing trade fairs, exhibitions, conferences worldwide. So may I please welcome Mr. Udo over on the dais for the welcome remarks.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Dear participants, it gives me an immense pleasure to welcome you all at the second edition of the Energy Storage India, second international conference and exhibition on energy storage and microgrids at the Disney Ambience Hotel in Delhi. We feel proud to bring you the key stakeholders from the clean energy ecosystem from the country and across the globe to discuss the importance of energy storage and its future applications in India. The rapid growth of renewable energy and its large-scale integration fostered by renewable portfolio standards coming into effect are accompanied by opportunities and challenges alike. Electricity providers are increasingly faced with the challenge to integrate variable renewable generation with the existing generation portfolio and the electricity grid. To operate reliably, grids need to continuously balance energy supply and demand. A task complicated by the variability of renewable energy resources, such as solar and wind. Sudden fluctuations in renewable output can cause grid instabilities, which in turn can present hurdles in the rising penetration of renewable resources and renewable integration. Renewable energy storage technologies provide effective variability management solutions through power smoothing and energy shifting applications. This means that renewables can now be efficiently integrated into the grid on a large scale. Energy storage is now an integral part of renewable energy management practice and is going to play a major supporting role in this exponential growth. Also, after the recent RFPs for energy storage in India by Power Grid Corporation of India and subsequently the Make in India campaign by the government of India, suddenly the energy storage market in India is looking hot for energy storage procurement, and it could not have been any better for Energy Storage India 2014. We are extremely delighted to welcome industry experts gathering at a common platform where we are building opportunities in the Indian market about technology and applications for storage and renewable energies. We would like to thank you all, the supporters, exhibitors, key partners and media partners for their support, and the team of India Energy Storage Alliance, Customized Energy Solutions, President of India, for their outstanding efforts in making this event a big success. I'm sure this event will be a great experience for all the participants and will surely benefit to all. I wish all of you a satisfied and successful integration at the event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Schultzman. I would now like to call upon Mr. Stephen Fernandez, the founder and president of Customized Energy Solutions. Mr. Fernandez has been involved in more than 100 consulting projects for clients throughout North America and globally. Mr. Fernandez has served on numerous committees in the various regional transmission organizations throughout the United States. So may I please ask Mr. Fernandez to join us on the dais.
Thank you all for attending the second annual Energy Storage India Conference. I'm so excited to see the marked improvement that we've made over this last year. When we sat here a year ago, there was a hope that energy storage would be the missing linchpin to solving some of the key problems that we have in India's energy market. A year later, we have now moved to where there are tangible RFPs out there. There are major projects that have been instigated and signed in the telecommunications sector, and there is great future in several of the markets: renewable integration, transportation, microgrids, that we will be discussing over the next 2 days. My hope for this conference is that we'll accomplish 3 things. The first one is you all will get to learn more about what's happening in India in the energy storage realm. Also, you'll be able to learn some of the best practices in the rest of the world. The second thing I'm hoping is that we'll be able to build more of a community, because none of us individually can solve these problems, but together we can do great things. And I'm excited to be able to join so many different participants in this sector together to be able to make that difference. And the third thing is to carry what we learn here out into our companies and into this industry, and to be a transformative force for India's energy grid. The needs are great, but so is the ability and the imagination of the Indian people. From the time I've been here, I've seen amazing progress in so many areas. And I look forward to being part of that process of bringing innovation into the energy sector. So the reason that I'm here today mostly, though, is not for helping the community, is not for the learning, is not for the future. It's because 10 years ago, I was smart enough to hire a young engineer, Rahul Walawalkar. And Rahul had a vision at that time of saying, let's learn what we have here in the United States, and let's take the best of that to India to leapfrog over where the US is, and have a better grid than we could have envisioned otherwise. And he was so convincing that I moved my entire family to India, where I lived in Pune as Rahul and I started the organization. And as we went to regulators and talked about energy storage as part of the component, I still remember those first meetings with Rahul. Oh, that's just too expensive. We're not ready for that. But as we kept talking and kept meeting, eventually we saw energy storage pop up in every conference. And suddenly we'd go to a renewable energy forum, and they'd be talking about renewable energy integration and storage. And we'd go to a session on microgrids and storage. And he really has been just a driving force in this industry, and I'm so glad to, again, call him not only my colleague, but my friend, and I thank him for everything he's done. Thank you all. And he'll be the next speaker, which all of you probably have met and heard much about. So I will hand this off to Rahul. Or actually, I hate to keep.
Thank you, Mr. Fernandez. So, Mr. Tarun Kapoor would be joining us shortly, but in the interest of time, I would just start off the keynote session directly. So most of us here already know Dr. Rahul Walawalkar, but for those of you who have joined us today, I'll just introduce him once more. Dr. Rahul Walawalkar is the Executive Director of India Energy Storage Alliance and Vice President of Customized Energy Solutions, and also part of Executive Council for Alliance for an Energy Efficient Economy in India. Rahul is involved in providing inputs for the demand response and energy storage policy to FERC and various state agencies in US as well as in India. His activities have covered complete range of smart grid, demand, response, and everyday storage, energy storage technologies. So may I please call upon Dr. Rahul Balakalkar on the dais to take ahead the keynote session. Rahul, if you please take over. So before we start, I would also like to call upon Mr. Ruth Kempner, Analyst, International Renewable Energy Agency, who is responsible for IRENA's roadmap activities. So if Mr. Ruth can please join us on the dais. Thank you.
So welcome everyone. Again, it's as Stephen has already laid out, it's a personal sort of agenda for me to drive this energy storage integration in India, but I've been amazed over the last particularly 12 to 18 months to see the growing and overwhelming support where actually throughout the day this will be the only session where I have to speak as compared to last year where maybe I ended up speaking at 3 or 4 sessions. So I think that shows the advancement of the industry, and again, similar to Stephen, I'm really excited about how things are going, and particularly with the approach of policymakers in India. And we're going to hear shortly from Mr. Tarun Kapoor, Joint Secretary of MNRE. But also after that, we have a key regulatory session chaired by Dr. Pramod Dev, former chairman of Central Electricity Regulatory Commission. And we're going to hear a lot more from key policymakers about how India can adopt energy storage and microgrid technologies in part of our efforts for reimagining India's energy infrastructure over the next decade. So, just a technical glitch. So again, as we've seen, energy storage technology is not a single technology. Lots of times when earlier the discussion was energy storage about happening, we used to focus more on the pumped hydro storage or lead acid batteries as the two extremes of energy storage technologies. But over the last decade, there has been tremendous innovation which has been happening in the field. There are over 100 different technologies which form the energy storage spectrum, where you have a number of electrochemical batteries, lead acid, advanced lead acid, lithium ion, various flow batteries, alternate solutions such as sodium-based batteries. We have thermal storage technologies, we have fuel cells, we have mechanical systems such as compressed energy storage, as well as flywheels. So there are a number of technologies which can be placed at different parts of the grid, and it can help in improving the grid stability, grid flexibility, and operations of the grid in every different way. So large-scale technologies such as pumped hydro and compressed air could be part of the supply side solutions. We can have various megawatt scale solutions which are typically coming in a containerized solution format right now as part of the transmission and distribution network. And we have already seen Power Grid Corporation of India, which is the central transmission planning for utility in India, has already announced over 300 million planned investments in energy storage as part of building the green corridors. And we are going to hear some of their thoughts as well as update about the RFP which they have issued for integrating 3 different types of energy storage technologies for providing ancillary services later during the day. But energy storage technologies can also address issues at the distribution level. Particularly in the US, it has been a key driver where people are looking for reliability. Yesterday in the inaugural workshops, we had a dedicated session focusing on power quality issues. And again, these are the issues that India is going towards a manufacturing-based economy will have to address. And that's where at the distribution level, integrating energy storage at strategic locations, maybe at the community energy storage or other distribution level, substation level asset is going to be a very key part. But again, energy storage is not just limited on the transmission or distribution side. It can also be integrated right in the households, in the every industry. We already are very familiar with having UPS systems in various houses or various commercial establishments. But there are new business models emerging where now energy storage as services could be introduced. And you are going to hear about this couple of times during the next 2 days, where PACS Rajdhani, one of the local utilities here in Delhi, is actually going to come up and going to challenge all of you to come and give a proposal for energy storage as a service. And we are going to hear from Mr. Takaya Watanabe tomorrow during commercial and industrial session about some of the approaches what Mitsubishi is taking in this area. If you sort of take a snap back, in 2008, even in US, energy storage was just in the infancy in terms of grid scale deployment. So when US Department of Energy first looked at large scale demonstration projects for USGOE, they selected some handful of projects which are focused on compressed air, flow batteries, lithium-ion batteries for demonstrating different business applications. But if you fast forward today, there are currently more than 300 different projects currently in various stages of construction all over US. And this is not just about US. Now, in particularly last 3-4 years, the energy storage adoption has started to increase around the globe. So if you see so around the globe, particularly even in Europe, where, for example, in Germany, specifically people are looking at integrating storage with solar systems. There are drivers for energy storage, particularly in India, as you are going to hear over the next 2 days. Energy storage systems are becoming commonplace in every part, and what is most important is the supporting policy framework is getting created, and that's why the next presentation, Ruud is going to talk about efforts which IRENA has taken over the last 3-4 years in trying to develop international roadmap for integrating energy storage as a key driver for renewable integration. So we at ISA last year did a first of its kind of study looking at energy storage market potential in India, and we looked at over 18 different applications, and we believe that India will present a 15 to 20 gigawatt market over the next 5 years for advanced energy storage technologies for applications such as energy access, renewable integration, ancillary services, commercial and industrial applications, telecom sector, as well as agricultural applications. Now, some of these applications are already starting to take off. For example, telecom sector over last year has invested more than $350 million in advanced energy storage solutions for reducing diesel consumption. And tomorrow we are going to hear from Vice President of Reliance Jio, one of the new telecom companies, on why they chose to go with advanced energy storage solutions for this application. We are also going to hear from other industries. For example, we have a presentation from Tesla. Now, all of you know Tesla for electric cars, and actually we have our electric car on the exhibition floor from Mahindra Reva. But Tesla is actually coming here to talk about applications of energy storage on the stationary side, where Tesla has tied up with Solar City for introducing solar plus energy storage in a very large scale all over US, and they are looking at exploring and bringing similar solutions to India. So we are going to hear about lots of these applications where it is not about something just 3 years in future, 5 years in future, but some of these things are taking place right now, and while we are waiting for some of the policy decisions to take place, industry is taking lead in finding out cost-effective solutions and going ahead and deploying. So another thing we try to assess is that is energy storage deployment in India going to be concentrated only on few states? But as a result of our analysis, what we believe is in India there are enough requirements across different customer segments that the market opportunity is almost present in all corners of India. There are certain states like Tamil Nadu, Rajasthan, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, where renewable integration may be the key driver, because these are the states who are going to be at the forefront when India is looking at adding 100 gigawatt wind and 200 gigawatt solar over the next decade. We are looking at states such as Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, where right now customers are facing with 10 to 16 hours of power cuts every day, and the only option for them is to run diesel generators. So these are the customers who are even right now ready to invest into microgrids and look for solutions where energy storage can provide a solution for reducing dependence on diesel. There are various islands, and we have members from Joint Regulatory Commission who are going to talk about yesterday in the Arena workshop emphasized on need for having solutions where in some of these islands they have to actually bring kerosene, bring diesel oil in sort of cans and actually float those cans in the water. Someone has to swim and drag those cans to use as a fuel for solution. We also have Colonel Pasricha from Indian Army who is going to talk about need for energy storage for Indian Army, where with so many forward races where there is the only solution. The deployment of microgrids and renewables can significantly improve quality of life as well as improve critical infrastructure abilities for Indian Armed Forces. And another amazing thing which again is evident all over the room and also you'll see in the exhibition floor number of these companies is how the industry is evolving. When 10 years back when I started, we were looking at maybe just 2 or 3 types of energy storage technologies. But now if you see any storage technology, there are multiple leading companies who are dedicating their efforts on commercializing these technologies. Over the last 5 years, probably over $1 billion have been invested by venture capital and private equity community in trying to bring technologies from laboratory scale to commercialize them. And now with all the leading manufacturing players entering this area, we are going to see rapid scale up of these technologies and reduction of cost. Because again, as we have heard a number of times that cost is the main issue, and that was the first issue which was highlighted to Stephen and me when we first started talking about storage. So we just thought we'll put our neck out and share some of the cost numbers because that's what everyone is interested about. So when we looked at it in 2008, the prices for energy storage, like lead acid has been relatively flat. So $150 per kilowatt hour is the price for lead acid batteries. And that is usually seen as a benchmark what other technologies should strive for. But based on number of business case studies and applications what we have developed, we actually believe that there are a number of additional parameters such as cycle life, efficiency, charge discharge rates, which can actually enable creating a strong business case for technologies even at price points above $500 per kilowatt hour. And what was happening in 2008 was that there were new technologies such as lithium ion coming in, but the price points were almost $2,000 to $4,000 per kilowatt hour, where people were focusing on looking at these technologies only for a 10-minute, 15-minute application. But within a span of last 5 years, lithium-ion battery costs have come down to almost now to around $400 to $700 per kilowatt hour, mainly driven by adoption of lithium-ion batteries in consumer applications for electric mobility as well as other applications. But then other technologies such as flow batteries, advanced lead acid are also showing similar improvements. And we are going to hear from our friend John Wood from eCold, who is going to talk about some of the amazing things which are happening in terms of hybrid solutions, where they are introducing a battery with lead acid and atomic capacitor as a combination. So there are lots of innovative things which are happening in the industry, which is driving down the price as well as improving the cycle life and other performance. And when you combine both these things, ultimately you get to the factor of levelized cost of energy. Because ultimately, if you want mass adoption, there has to be a strong economic case. And the dotted line in red is representing the cost for generating power from diesel generator. And the other lines are showing the cost of energy if you are just storing it in different types of energy storage formats. Obviously, you need to add the charging cost on top of this and also take into account any losses in the efficiency which you have to do. But now you are starting to see clear business case where with lithium-ion as well as flow batteries, your cost for diesel is significantly higher than the levelized cost from energy storage. And that margin with the cost of solar and wind production going down is actually now able to make a business case. But if you look at sort of 3 years down the line in 2018 in terms of the expected prices, we are expecting this levelized cost to come down somewhere from 2 rupees to 5 rupees. And at that price point, with solar available almost at 5 rupees or 6 rupees, you can have stabilized renewable power competing with on-peak grid power. Because already we have commercial industrial customers who are paying anywhere from 10 rupees to 14 rupees for their peak power. And if you can have renewable power which is stabilized through energy storage available at 10 rupees as an integrated cost, then suddenly the entire game changes and you can see very large rapid adoption in India. And India has demonstrated over the last 3-4 decades that every decade India picks up sort of one issue. In 70s it was milk production, where India became from largest importer of milk to becoming amongst the top 2 exporters of milk. Then it was telecom, IT. In every place we are shown that when the policymakers put their mind to creating an enabling environment, Indian entrepreneurs are up to the challenge and can transform the country in 10 years. So I think that the next decade is going to be the decade for energy infrastructure transformation. And with support from all of you, I think we can definitely do it. Right now there are still some challenges in terms of lack of policy framework, but MNRE has already taken some steps. They have created the Standing Committee on Energy Storage. We are getting great support from international institutions like IRENA. There is a Global Energy Storage Alliance which is formed, where we are getting support from California Energy Storage Alliance, US Energy Storage Alliance, Ontario Energy Storage Alliance, German Storage Alliance, China Storage Alliance. So we are no longer waiting for learning it the hard way. There are a number of demonstrations, number of learnings have happened around the globe over the last decade. And I think India is very well poised for leapfrogging using the learnings from these initiatives and create a very rapid market for these technologies. But at the same time, with the Make in India campaign, we also believe that India is not going to be only the largest market, but Indian innovators, Indian manufacturing community can actually play a very key and important role in localizing these technologies, bringing up next generation innovation to the field, and actually bring down the cost very rapidly so that we can have scale up energy storage technologies and applications around the globe. And we need all of you and your active participation for these efforts. So with this, I'd like to hand over to Rahul for his presentation and talk about the international renewable energy networks efforts on developing an energy storage roadmap for the global community.
Welcome everyone, and first of all, thank you very much for inviting the International Renewable Energy Agency to India and also to your Energy Storage Conference. The title of my presentation today is Rethinking Energy, and this comes from a publication which we launched in June this year in New York at the Sustainable Energy for All initiative. It's an initiative from the United Nations which looks at how we can double the share of renewable energy by 2030 and also create universal access to modern energy services as well as improving energy efficiency. We chose this title deliberately. It's our work, we're not part of the United Nations, but to really kind of convince people that we're really in times where there's a really shift taking place from the energy system which we've known to what we know what is going to happen in the future. To take a couple of steps back, the International Renewable Energy Agency was an idea from the government of Germany. So in 2009, they invited actually governments around the world to come to Bonn, and in the hope that they would be able to convince 10 to 20 governments to set up a new international organization. This in itself was already very ambitious because an international organization on energy hasn't been established for 40 years. So having able to sign up 10 or 20 countries to such an organization was already for them a success. When they left, at the end of the day, already almost 80 countries signed up to establish a new international organization. So for them, for Germany, but also for the countries around the world, they really need to come together and see renewable energy as a new way, a new mechanism to help these countries around the world to develop. Eventually, we were established in 2011, and that number of 80 countries already moved to 110 countries. We're now in 2014, and we have more than 170 countries being members of ARENA. The important thing to remember is that it's not one minister signing up to the International Renewable Energy Agency. It actually has to be ratified by Parliament. So these are really commitments from those governments to work together on renewable energy. The other remarkable thing is that the International Renewable Energy Agency is established with its headquarters in the United Arab Emirates. So this is the first international organization which is actually established in the Middle East. And of course, one of the interesting things is that the Renewable Energy Agency is established with its headquarters in a country or in a region which relies on oil. So, although this seems quite paradox, I think it's a very important signal that we're at a place where we're really going to see a shift towards renewable energy. So why did, for example, the United Arab Emirates decide to sign up to ARENA, or actually offer to host its headquarters? It's not about energy security, they've got enough oil. They really see renewable energy as a way to improve their economic development, to create jobs within their country, and they also see the economic case. They're relying on oil for desalination to produce water. Renewable energy can do this much cheaper. So this is one of the kind of key cases where you have a country which is interested in renewable energy just for the purpose of economic development. But of course we have climate change as one of the driving issues for introducing renewable energy, but also environmental concerns. Of course, in China there's a lot of issues about air pollution in the cities. Renewable energy is one of the major solutions for that particular problem. And of course we see also changing and growing energy demand. Energy demand is growing very quickly, so many countries are trying to catch up with energy demand. Renewable energy, which can be introduced in a couple of years instead of 10 or 15 years, is one of the solutions where countries are looking for, especially those growing and emerging economies. So this whole package of drivers from the different countries is pushing this renewable revolution forward. What we've seen now in the last 10 years is that you have a shift. So, and this shows kind of the additional capacity installed every single year. And what you see that in 2001, 80% of the additional capacity being built was conventional technologies. Nowadays, actually 60% of it is renewable energy. Of course, there are some people saying that capacity is only one characteristic to look at. And of course, energy production itself is still dominated by fossil fuels. However, I think an important aspect to take into consideration is that if 60% of the capacity built today is renewable energy, those are all workers, businesses who know and understand renewable energy. And this understanding of renewable energy and how we'll be moving forward is an important parameter to continue growth. One of the other aspects, one of the earliest activities that ARENA started doing in 2011 was to try to collect cost data. One of the things we found was that many of the energy plants in the countries, in the ARENA member countries, use, and it is obvious of course, it's logical, old cost data. If you have an energy plan which is built in 2011, you use cost data from 2009, the latest available. However, if you look at the latest data available, you see enormous cost reductions. And solar PV, 70% of cost reductions from 2007 to today. So if you use the latest numbers, those energy planning tools become completely different. And that's what we do to try to show over here. I mean, renewable energy is cost competitive in many countries around the world. And especially if you compare it to diesel-based generators in off-grid systems or in backup systems, then renewable energy is certainly the best economic choice. Another activity which we did, and that's what I was responsible for in the last 3 years, was to look at 2030. We did an analysis of country by country and looked at their national renewable energy plans to see where they see themselves in 2030. Then we asked in each one of those countries experts to comment on what would be additionally possible. And one of those countries was India. And this is kind of the aggregated results of that analysis, showing that there's going to be tremendous growth in each and one of the renewable energy resources. But I think, especially for today, the biggest growth will be in solar and wind. So that are those two variable renewable energy resources, which are going to be a tremendous growth between now and 2030. So that, of course, spurs think even though we are a renewable energy agency, we still haven't got our head around it, how progressive this industry may be. I've just put like 3 kind of historic sources on this sheet. This was the Industry Association for Solar Energy in 1995, who predicted it's going to be up 11 gigawatts in 2010. Then you have the International Energy Agency, a couple of years later, which had 500 megawatts in 2010. And then 2007, and a couple of years later, one of the kind of leading market researchers on solar energy, and very progressive, estimated it was going to be 13 gigawatts in 2010. If we now look back, what was installed in 2010, it was 40 gigawatts. So even the most progressive projections for 2010 were a factor 4 off. So even though we think that we're going to have 1,250 gigawatts or 1,400 gigawatts of solar PV in 2030, based on these national experts, we have to take into consideration that it could be far off. That if we're progressing as we're progressing right now, it's really going to be a transition and really going to be a revolution. So that's what we have as an international organization trying to help our policymakers with. The other thing, I think, which is important, is that we're seeing right now that a lot of the technology being built, especially solar PV, is utility scale. So this is resulting in many countries trying to improve and strengthen the transmission distribution lines, not only for solar PV but also for wind, to be able to evacuate large amounts of electricity when the wind is blowing or the sun is shining. So on the one hand side, we're trying here to kind of really strengthen the grid to accommodate variable renewables. On the other hand, we have also distributed renewables coming into the system. And so that is actually having an opposite effect. Producing electricity locally doesn't mean we need to transport or transmit electricity over thousands of kilometers. This has actually an opposite effect. So what if solar PV prices continue to go down? And like in countries in Denmark, Germany, but also in the US and in Brazil, if solar PV costs are going to be cheaper than residential electricity prices, will there be a shift in this system? Will we move from kind of centralized power production to decentralized power production? Will that mean a completely different shift into the electricity system? Yesterday evening when I came back, I was quickly going through the newspaper, and one of the most remarkable stories which came up was that E.ON, a big German utility company which has been based on conventional electricity technologies, is going to sell off its coal-fired gas and nuclear power stations. And it's going to really only focus on renewable energy. The remarkable part of the story yesterday was that the CEO of E.ON said that they were going to focus on the less risky business, which was renewable energy. And they're going to sell off the more risky business, which is coal and gas-fired power stations. This is a complete shift in thinking. While maybe even 4 or 5 years ago, renewable energy was the risky part, and the conventional technologies was what you could rely on. We're seeing a transformation taking place, not only kind of here, but also in the utilities themselves. So how to deal with this? There are many, many open questions. So when we published our renewable energy roadmap in June this year, one of the key questions already came up from policymakers, or some of the key questions which came up from policymakers are, okay, if we're moving towards such a renewable energy-based power system, will we need storage? What kind of storage do we need? When and what kind of policies do we need to develop? And how can we ensure that we get the benefits of energy storage for our system and attract investments? These questions are now placed in a very logical order, but in reality, it's much more difficult than that. Even starting to think about developing policies, you have to take into consideration what is the role of investments, what are the roles of international business in energy storage. So it's a very complicated story, and that's why we are here, also to learn what is happening in India, so that we can kind of share these lessons across the world. So with these kind of questions in mind, we started at the beginning of the year specifically looking at an electricity storage roadmap. As I said before, the global renewable energy roadmap, what we call Remap 2030, is our context. But we really wanted to look at kind of what is already out there in each one of the individual countries, how can we collect that in terms of energy storage plans and roadmaps. We also specifically want to focus on what is the interaction between developed and developing countries. How are the developments different, or how are they similar, and how can we learn from one another? And of course, one of the key activities we want to do is to focus on how can we add value for the countries as a whole. Starting in January, we therefore did 3 workshops this year. We started with a kick-off workshop in Germany, where we invited quite a number of the German policymakers to talk about what they're doing in terms of energy storage. Last month we were in Japan, where they also have developed some subsidy programs, for example, for residential energy storage systems, but also a lot of demonstration projects. And a deliberate choice was to do this 3rd workshop here in India, because we wanted to actually learn from India what is happening over here, and how can we translate it into this global electricity roadmap. Now, Rahul kindly gave me the task that, based on yesterday's discussion, I wanted to have to provide some initial insights. And please be aware, these are my insights, what I've learned yesterday. And each one of the stakeholders is an iterative process. So we will write down a report, and you, as key stakeholders, will be able to comment on that again. But what are my insights from yesterday? The first insight was that we made a good choice to come to India. It was remarkable to see in the presentations from the Secretary and from the Joint Secretary the remarkable diversity in India. So if we're looking at renewable energy storage, and we want to look at renewable energy storage in different contexts, all of these contexts can be found in India. We've got mountains, we've got deserts, we've got monsoons, we've got wind, we've got solar, but we also have biomass, and we also have hydro a lot. So how do all of these renewable energy sources be able to combine to look into this transformation? And then the other thing is that I think India at the moment has kind of 3 key features which are exemplary for the rest of the world. One of them is growing energy demand. So we're still building here an electricity system, and so we can actually build this electricity system to be the next generation electricity system. The second characteristic is that we have an ambitious government over here with ambitious plans for renewable energy. So if you combine those two together, you really create an environment where we can look at how energy storage can be a part of this new generation. The second insight was that when we started this stakeholder workshop, we split it into 2 parts. One looking at how you use energy storage for grid-connected, utility-scale renewables versus off-grid systems. One of the insights was that policies definitely have to be different for each and one of those applications today. But the question is, what about 2030? Are we going to see a system where we have mini-grids which are locally balanced with energy storage that then are connected to a grid? Is it going to be much more of a matched system? And how are we going to adapt our policies towards such a system in 2030? Even if it has to be differentiated now, how can we move forward into the future? That's one of the key lessons which I got from the experts yesterday. The third lesson was that demonstration of technology was mentioned a couple of times. But more importantly, demonstration of the system as a whole. And then I mean, how can we demonstrate bankability of energy storage projects? How can we demonstrate different or innovative tariff mechanisms for energy storage projects? How can we demonstrate innovative regularity frameworks for energy storage? All of those have and should be demonstrated. So the demonstration projects will have to move wide enough, really thinking about how we can integrate energy storage into the system as a whole. The fourth one, which I took out of the workshop, was the word local. And I've printed it here 3 times because I think there are 3 connotations to it. First of all, renewable energy technologies, renewable energy sources are often local. You can use local resources. So if you have local resources, which could be solar or wind or biomass or hydro or a combination of all of those, you have to also look at the energy storage as a local technology. How can you integrate that all together? So that's the one local. The second local, which I got from the presentations, was that we also have to think about, if you put energy storage systems in place, How can we maintain those, but also how can we recycle those systems locally? That still means we can have international technologies being dispersed around the world. That's what we need. But we have to think about local kind of supply chains. How can we use each one of those different steps of suppliers and users all together in order to create these energy systems? The third one is about the people who are using these energy storage systems. We have to think about how they're going to use it. And one of the questions, which came up was, do we need independent grid storage operators in maintaining these systems? These are still open questions, but thinking about how these energy storage systems are integrated into the system, I think, is a very important issue. And then the last issue, and I think that was more strongly than any of the other workshops, people were mentioning the environment. Some of the transmission bottlenecks in India are due because people are trying to protect environments, natural environments. So if we are not building those transmission lines and instead we think about energy storage, that has to be environmentally benign as well. And I think that brings me back to the final point I wanted to say, and that came from this last point, is that the experts over here thinking about energy storage and immediately thinking, what is the impact on the environment and how can we make sure that energy storage is benign? If that's the key issue, then we really have to think about energy storage as how can energy storage help us, not just for the sake of energy storage, but help us to create an environment for all of us in which we can work much better. I think that's what we have to bring back to the electricity storage program as a whole. Really taking energy storage as one of the key elements where we can create a global environment where renewables can flourish now and into the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kempner. I would like to state that I would welcome Mr. Tarun Kapoor, the Joint Secretary, National Solar Mission, from the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Government of India. He is presently holding the charge of Managing Director of Solar Energy Corporation of India. Can we please have a round of applause for Mr. Tarun Kapoor? Mr. Kapoor, if you can please come and share your views with us.
Good morning, and thank you for inviting me here, and thank you to all of you for coming to such a far-off location and attending this event. I would have been very happy to spend more time here and learn something, because energy storage is an area where I don't have too much knowledge, and I want to learn, because the future of renewables in India depends largely on the possibilities of storing energy, and we are very eagerly looking forward to to new technologies coming in this area, to costs coming down, so that energy storage devices can be deployed freely in the country. Let us just look at the future of energy in India, what is going to happen and where energy storage is going to play a very major role. So in India, grid connected is one large area, and then we have a large off-grid sector. Unlike the developed world where it's just grid connected power, in India off-grid is going to continue to play a very major role for several years to come. So first I'll just talk briefly about grid connected and then go on to off-grid. On the grid connected side, today renewables contribute just 6% of the energy going into the grid. So if we are talking of increasing this to 15%, that's what India is aiming at by 2020, then the game is going to change quite a bit. But now the current thinking in the government is to increase the target several times. So if we are talking of a target of 100,000 megawatts of solar and some 65,000 megawatts of wind and other RE by say 2020 or 2022, then we are talking of renewable energy at around 18 or 19% into the grid. And we are talking about 10.5% of solar going into the grid. And this is if the growth is on the conventional side is on the normal rate, which is about say 5% or so. But if, as our minister is mentioning everywhere, if we escalate the growth in the conventional side also, and from today's 1 trillion units generation per annum, we want to take it to double it to 2 trillion by 2020, then this scenario could be even more different. So, what we are looking for in the coming years in India is a total different kind of a scenario as far as power is concerned. If we go by the thinking currently and the plans which are being made. Now, on one side, this is all linked to growth in demand also, because and growth in demand will happen only if the country progresses fast, people have more income, people have better lives, and therefore the demand for energy in homes goes up, demand for energy in industry goes up, demand for energy for common use goes up, and the per capita consumption in India say doubles or maybe triples. So then things could be quite different. So if we have a scenario where say renewables account for say 15 or 20% into the grid, then comes the question of balancing the grid. So in other countries, people do have gas-based generation. There might be some pump storage. There might be a lot of hydro with storage. In India, we do have hydro with storage, and this hydro needs to be managed in a slightly better manner to support the grid. But then gas-based generation, whatever we had, we are not able to use because the price of gas is high. The government is now thinking of ideas on how this stranded capacity can be brought on board again. If that happens, then that does provide some support to the grid, but then whatever capacity we have on gas is not enough. So then, what are we going to do about grid management? So the immediate answer is storage, and that is possible only if the price comes down. Currently, renewables are considered to be a little more expensive than conventional. In the last few tenders we've seen, yesterday also there was a meeting with the UP government, and we were told that they are buying coal-based power, thermal power at around 5 rupees or 5 rupees 50 paisa. And wind, of course, is a little cheaper than that. Solar is a little more expensive, but coming around say 650 or 650 to 7. So therefore, for the additional capacity which the country needs in the country now to meet the growing demands, renewables are as competitive as the conventional sources. What is going to happen after the coal mines, domestic coal mines go into auction, what kind of price we will see, I really don't know. But I don't think it will be the price of power from new projects is going to go down drastically. It might still over around say 5 rupees, or maybe somewhere pit plants might give 4.5 rupees, but then it will keep increasing with fuel pass-through. Fuel pass-through is an accepted formula now. So it will keep increasing. So therefore, currently renewables minus storage do have a story. They can compete with conventional power. Now just add storage to it, the cost currently would go up by say 30%, 40%. But what I hear that in say research going on all over the world, this could come down to say 20%. So if it comes down to 20% and we don't have to provide storage to the entire renewable capacity, maybe just a small percentage. So then it doesn't really add to the total cost of renewables by more than say 5%. If that happens, then I think we still have a game of storage with renewables, and then that combination does become a very big, very good, very strong combination as an alternative for conventional power or coal-based power. So, in the government, we do keep thinking on what kind of policies should we bring in so that we can attract investors or developers to come in with the solutions which will give stable power, or at least close to stable power, which then grid can accept. So maybe at some point of time we have to go for tenders and try out a combination of solar, wind, and a little bit of storage, and try to get, say, very almost close to flat term or base load kind of a situation. We will do that. We will try to come up with at least some pilots on this. Some countries have done it, maybe just a few pilots, but then India is the country which really needs this to happen. And if we can get storage into the on this side where large power plants are getting connected to the grid, then the market for storage in India is going to be very, very big. It's really going to be tremendous, and then we have to look for megawatt size storage, big storage facilities, and low cost, and maybe whatever technologies could offer that solution. So that is as far as the grid connected part is concerned. Now let's look at the off-grid part. On the off-grid side, we have experimented with microgrids, not too many, but then at least several different types of experiments have been tried. Maybe the models different models which you will get in India, you won't find anywhere else in the world. We've not been able to spread it so far because, again, the costs remain high. If we want to supply power on the off-grid mode through microgrids, and we want to deliver power at price which is affordable, because we are talking of villages, we are talking of people who do not have too much of a paying capacity, then the price has to remain low. Government is willing to put in money, but then there are some limitations. If it has to depend on government money, then the large-scale expansion generally does get restricted. So, but then still we do want to look for solutions which will work. So while the price of generating power is going down, so currently we have our benchmark cost, and with just solar we are talking of, say, 80 rupees per watt or 8 crores per megawatt on the off-grid side. On the grid connected side, it's just 6.5 crore rupees per megawatt, but on the off-grid side. But if we add battery to it, then and we put a microgrid, then the benchmarks not only, I think they become 2.5 times, or even a little more than that, maybe 3 times. And the cost price at which the power is then delivered to the homes in terms of kilowatt hour goes to 70 rupees, 80 rupees, or 20 rupees. But in terms of the facility provided, or if you just go into number of lights and a fan and those basic things, then again the cost per household is still not too much, between say 200 rupees and 300, 400. There are some people who are without any government support are able to supply to a household at say 300 or 350 rupees and at least meet their basic needs. So, but then the major cost there is storage, and the cost of storage initially doesn't appear very high because that capital cost is say just maybe 30% or 20%, but then there is a replacement cost, and replacement cost every 4 years, 5 years really adds on to the total cost. So therefore this growth of the microgrid story has not, the main bottleneck is storage. If the cost of storage can come down, then things can really happen very fast and things can be really good. But here it's not just the reduction in cost, in the capital cost which is important. The important thing is the right technology and education, because what I have seen in the field is that if you install a system, off-grid system, the battery with proper maintenance can, even a normal lead acid battery, can last for 7 years, 8 years. I've seen lead acid batteries even last for 10 years and 10 or 11 years. But in most of the situations in the field, people tend to discard lead acid batteries after 3 years. In solar lanterns, people tend to discard batteries even after 1 year. They say that they don't last. So, is it more just technology, or is there a component of education or learning also involved? People don't know how to maintain these systems or don't know how to use the system, and because of that, the cost goes up. And the worst thing what we've seen is that you install a system solar panels have a life of 25 years, the luminaires and other connections and other things have a life of say 10 years or 15 years, the battery, if it has a life of just 5 years, 3 years, the whole system then gets a life of just 3 years or 5 years. And in villages, people just tend to throw off these systems as soon as the first component goes off or first component stops working. So therefore, good technologies and then knowledge about technologies on the off-grid side, I think, is very important. But in the long run, though we feel that the entire country will have 24/7 power through the conventional sources, through the main grid, every household will get connected. But practically, I think that it's going to take several years. It can't happen in the next 5 years or 10 years. It might take more than that. And therefore, this need for off-grid solutions in India is a very important area to look at, and it's a very big area. It's not a small area. Even if we are talking of individual households and we are talking of small loads in villages or in small towns, the numbers are so huge. At 7.5 crore households burning kerosene as of today, just multiply this by very small requirements or loads, then the numbers become really huge, and therefore the requirement of storage automatically, one can imagine, it's quite a lot on this off-grid side also. Now, let us also look at thermal storage and other ways in which energy can directly be stored. There is a big need in India for energy other than lighting also. Air conditioning, of course, as people become more and more affluent, then air conditioning does come in, but then basic refrigeration, that is a big area, and in certain cases, even heating. So, there are solutions available for storing energy directly in the form of heat that again has not been deployed very well in the country. The technologies are there, but the cost has to come down, which will happen only if there are some standard solutions. Because I hear of a lot of solutions, people keep coming and talking to me, and they keep giving very good ideas and very good solutions, but then those are experiments. We need very standard solutions, and we need large companies to come in with those good standard products which can be produced on mass scale and then taken into the country, and then the price will come down, and then those products do have a large market, they do have a large scope. Cold storage, for example, cold storage on the off-grid side with some kind of energy storage, thermal storage is possible. I think that itself is a huge market in the country, considering the amount of vegetables or food products that perish. So these are all areas which offer great business opportunities. These are areas where there is a huge need in the country. Technologies are available. It's just a question of getting those right technologies and scaling up. We look forward to good solutions. We look forward to innovative ideas, and from the ministry we would certainly welcome all that. And I see a great future for all these technologies and all these solutions. So therefore, sum total is that we do need storage in the country. We do need good storage technologies and good solutions, and from the government we will be willing to support it. Now, last point, what policies government should come up with to encourage storage, what policies government must come up with so that these solutions which are scattered all over the world come to this country which really needs them. Right now, I don't think that we really have too many government programs which support storage. We've not really looked at it in a way going beyond just experimentation, which now I think we need to do, because even countries like Germany are taking storage very seriously, or countries where grid-connected power is adequately available are taking storage very seriously. So, in fact, we also need to think a little more about that. And we do need to come up with some support for this area so that mass-scale deployment does take place, and also encourage power projects which or give slightly better incentives for renewable energy-based projects where the PLF is a little better. Or, for example, I just compare with hydro, because I worked in hydro for several years. So in hydro, the requirement from the regulators is that hydro plant must have 3 hours storage. So on the on wind or solar, we don't have any requirement like that. We don't prescribe any. We don't say that you have to have a curve, generation curve, which should be of this shape or close to this shape. If we prescribe something like that, then automatically every generation plant would have to add a little bit of storage, and just that little, without adding too much to the cost, may provide some kind of grid stability. We have to think on these lines, and some solutions might come up. So thank you once again, and I look forward to some good recommendations coming from this seminar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kapoor. We have been, as I mentioned in my initial remarks before you came in, the entire community is very much encouraged by the proactive approach what MNRE has taken under your leadership, such as formation of the standing committee on energy storage, as well as looking at inviting the entire community for providing recommendations for possible roadmap for storage integration. And at the end of the event, we will be taking out recommendations from various sessions, and will definitely submit our summary recommendations to MNRE. In fact, over the last 6 months or 1 year, we have already done some work in this area with Shakti Foundation, where we looked at possibly the requirement for ancillary services for enabling greater renewable penetration, and sort of try to compile best practices from around the world on how energy storage technologies have played a key role on providing ancillary services. In fact, in the next session after lunch, we are going to have 3 key presentations from Keynote, from Essence Electric, as well as the West America, where 3 speakers are going to share about actual operating projects where they have been providing grid support in US as well as other areas. So we have just a quick report which we would like you to release. It's a joint report from Shakti Foundation and India Energy Storage Alliance on ancillary services in India and potential role for energy storage. Also, if you may allow, I'd like to invite Mr. S.K. Suni, CEO of Prosoco, who has been actually the key member for the grid management over the last 2 decades in India, and also Dr. Pramod Dev, former chairman of CERC, who joined us on the podium for this. Both of them have been a guiding force for us to do this work. We'll be breaking for tea now, but also I'd like Karan Kapoor to join us for inaugurating the exhibition, which will be open throughout the day and tomorrow in the neighboring room. So, sorry. As a small token of appreciation.